Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. A few years ago, the editor of The Lancet, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world, wrote this editorial. Richard Horton said, "The case against science is straightforward. Much of the scientific literature, perhaps half, may simply be untrue. Afflicted by studies with small sample sizes, tiny effects, invalid exploratory analyses, and flagrant conflicts of interest, together with an obsession for pursuing fashionable trends of dubious importance, science has taken a turn towards darkness. As one participant put it, poor methods get results. In medical science, perhaps half of the studies may be untrue, but in climate science, the percentage is much higher." In this video, I'm going to show you one example of climate science which has no basis in reality. Earth and Space Science News says, ski seasons at many of North America's western resorts might melt away by 2085 because of warming temperatures. This is a brand new article, but they're using a 5-year-old picture from a ski resort in California. It's pretty easy to get pictures online of ski resorts. This is what Taos, New Mexico looked like yesterday. This is what the top of the mountain looked like yesterday during a blizzard. And these are ski patrol people at the top of the mountain this morning. This is what Sunrise Ski Area in Arizona looked like yesterday afternoon. We've been having a lot of snow in the West in recent years, so the authors of the article had to use a 5-year-old picture to try to get their propaganda across. But weather is not climate, so let's look at the long-term data. Over the last 50 years, autumn snow extent in North America has greatly increased, with recent years being at a record high. This is due to the fact that cold Arctic air is penetrating further south, causing the freeze line to move closer to the equator, and precipitation which used to fall as rain is now falling as snow. And the same thing is true with winter snow extent. It's been increasing for 50 years. We've already seen enough to see that the claims being made by the authors are complete nonsense, but I'm just getting started. This graph shows the average winter daily maximum temperature over the past century at all United States Historical Climatology Network stations. Winter afternoon temperatures in the United States peaked in 1954, and they've been declining for a century. And that is exactly why winter snow extent is increasing. North American winter snow extent is increasing because U.S. winter temperatures are getting colder. This graph shows the winter percent of days which get above the freezing mark in the United States. Once again, you can see that the number of days above freezing during winter has declined sharply in the United States, with recent years being among the coldest on record. And the same thing is true with United States autumn temperatures. They used to be much warmer prior to 55 years ago. This graph shows the autumn percent of days above 60 degrees Fahrenheit in the United States. They've declined sharply, with the last 2 years being among the coldest on record. When I was a child, ski season typically went from December through March. Now it's going more like October to June or July. I grew up skiing and used to be a ski racer. Anyone who's paying attention knows that ski seasons have gotten much better in the United States over the past 50 years. When I was a child, on many days after skiing, I would have to repair the bottom of my skis because they'd been scraped over rocks. Skiing in the West was frequently very marginal in the 1960s and 1970s. It's gotten much better. This is what Mammoth, California looked like in 2017. It's no surprise that the article used a picture from 2015. This is what Squaw Valley, California looked like 2 days ago. But it wasn't always like that at Squaw Valley. The 1960 Winter Olympics were held there and almost had to be canceled because they didn't have any snow. Snow fell at the last minute and rescued the 1960 Squaw Valley Winter Olympics. In 2004, climate fraudster Katharine Hayhoe said that California only had until the year 2060. She said, "If we don't change our ways, holding another Winter Olympics in Squaw Valley would be very difficult." The 2060 number is something she simply made up, and she obviously isn't aware of the actual history of the 1960 Winter Olympics, which were very difficult. The author of this 2006 article attempted to rewrite history. They said, 46 years ago this month, the world's athletes frolicked in the snow at the 1960 Winter Olympics in Squaw Valley. This is a fairly typical Orwellian rewrite of history being attempted by the press. Reality is that they almost had to move the 1960 Winter Olympics to the Northeast because there was no snow in California. But conditions in California now are very different than they were in 1960. They have so much snow that people are being killed by avalanches. Thus the 5-year-old picture in the brand new article. This is a similar article from 2008 done by two scientists at the University of Colorado here in Boulder. They said, climate change may force skiers uphill. The study by two Colorado researchers says Aspen Mountain in Colorado and Park City in Utah will see dramatic changes even with a reduction in carbon emissions which fuel climate change. If carbon emissions increase, the average temperature at Park City will be 10.4 degrees warmer by 2100, and there likely will be no snowpack, according to the study. Skiing at Aspen with an average temperature 8.6 degrees higher than now will be marginal. But the data shows that winter temperatures in the United States have been declining for a century. In other words, these scientists didn't do any research. This graph shows annual snowfall here in Boulder, where the University of Colorado is located. There's been no trend over the last 75 years, and it's a lot snowier now than it used to be. And this graph shows the number of snowy days. Once again, there's been no trend since the 1930s, and this past year was tied for the highest on record. We had 39 snowy days in Boulder last year, which tied the 1973 record. All these claims made by these University of Colorado scientists were complete nonsense. We are getting lots of snow in Colorado in recent years. But there wasn't always a lot of snow in Colorado. At Christmas 1976, President Ford tried to take his vacation at Vail, but there wasn't any snow. We were having a terrible drought in the West at that time. Governor Brown said drought-stricken California was facing a disaster of immeasurable magnitude. At that same time, England had their hottest and driest summer on record. This is not a scene you see very often in cool, rainy England. Here's another article from 1995. Global warming threatens skiing, scientists say. 25 years ago, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was pimping the same anti-science nonsense. And 20 years ago, David Viner from the Climatic Research Unit in England said that children just aren't going to know what snow is. In 2014, the New York Times announced the end of snow and used a similar picture of a ski slope which didn't have enough snow on it. And in 2006, the New York Times announced that skiing at Whistler in Canada was ruined by global warming. This is what Whistler looked like yesterday. In 2016, the New York Times and Governor Jerry Brown announced the California permanent drought. That's the same Governor Brown who 40 years earlier said California was facing a disaster of immeasurable magnitude. Wired magazine also said that California's drought is probably forever. And a few months later, California had their wettest winter on record. This is very similar to what happened after the drought in 1977. California flooded for several years after that. Climate alarmists appear to be incapable of learning that climate is cyclical. Instead of doing something intelligent to protect California's water supply, Jerry Brown chose to spend $100 billion on a train. He believed that reducing greenhouse gas emissions would prevent droughts in California. California has a very long history of drought. They used to get droughts which were about 200 years long. Climate experts want you to believe that all of these tremendous droughts from the past were natural, but little tiny recent ones were man-made. What these climate scientists are doing makes no sense and has nothing to do with science. This is exactly what the editor of Lancet was saying. The case against science is straightforward. Much of the scientific literature, perhaps half, may simply be untrue. President Eisenhower warned about this in his farewell speech in 1961. He said, "The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite." This is exactly the situation we're in now. We have a bunch of academics who are doing junk science and trying to seize control of public policy. We can't allow this to happen. The case against climate science is very straightforward. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.